Hi, I'm Nancy LeBove. I'm the founder of Alumni in Recovery. I have worked as a nurse in addiction and mental health for over 20 years. I'm also a woman in long-term recovery from addiction, alcohol, drug use. It's also known as substance use disorder. Addiction is preventable. We live in a time that we need to be extremely conscious and mindful of the substances that we put into our bodies and why. We can no longer use recreationally without extreme care and mindfulness. 93,331 people died of overdose deaths in 2020. Alumni in Recovery are local people speaking openly of our experiences with active addiction.
Hi, my name is Tom Canavan, Director of the Alumni in Recovery Parent Program. My son Christopher died at the age of 29 in July 2015. After his meaningless death, I sought some way of making a difference to help prevent other children and adults from going down the same path of meaningless destruction. Alumni in Recovery is that powerful tool to bring awareness, hope, and resources to our schools and communities. Please watch the video that follows and share it with your families, schools, and communities. Start a conversation that will bring awareness about addiction in your communities and schools. It's important to understand that addiction is a disease and must be treated as such.
We also want you to be aware of the Good Samaritan law, to call 911 if someone's unconscious or unresponsive and get them the life-saving medical help they need without fear of prosecution from law enforcement. We must all work together and help each other and prevent this brain disease from taking more lives. Thank you for watching.
A lot of times when people hear the words drug addict, they think about this stereotypical person that lives under the bridge with the beer bottle in the paper bag, or they think about the word junkie with a needle in the arm, and they don't look at me and they don't see I used to be a drug addict. It's something that I try to tell people, you know, these stereotypes, they don't exist. My name is Melissa Davies and I am in recovery. I come into these schools and I share my story, and I'm proud to be in recovery because I want to help end that stereotype. Sometimes I will look at my past and, you know, Facebook Memories does that thing where they show you where you were 10 years ago. And like 10 years ago, I was 16 years old, and that was the peak of my addiction. I lost my virginity because I was drunk. And I used to be that girl, like before I started drinking and before I started smoking pot, I was the girl that was anti-drugs. I was actively hanging out with the DARE program, and I was just like, yeah, like this is great. You know, I was what some would call a nerd. That was great. That was who I was going to be. I wanted to be a pastor for my church. You know, I didn't want to have sex until I was married. I didn't want to do anything. Like, I was a very innocent child. But then I turned 13 and my whole world just like changed. I don't know if you ever saw the movie My Girl. That's what happened to me. You know, I lived an innocent life. I had a mom, a dad, 2 older sisters. I had dogs. I lived in a blue ribbon community. And then 13, my parents got divorced. Okay, that's strike 1. I had some personal things going on at home. That's strike 2. Suddenly, I lost my best friend. When you're 13 years old and your best friend just dies, I didn't believe in God anymore, because why would God take away my best friend at 13 years old? I felt alone. I felt lost. I was confused. I had no idea how to process all of that trauma. One of the biggest regrets I have is not taking advantage of the help that was so desperately trying to be given to me. I literally just froze and then tried to just run away. I share my story because if I had somebody come into my school when I was such a vulnerable young girl and share their story, I would have felt more confident to accept the help given to me. Instead of talking to counselors that were so desperately trying to help me and telling teachers the truth of what was going on in my head and what was going on at home, I just felt like I was the only person in the world that ever dealt with loss and that ever had to deal with grief. The only place that I felt okay was when I was at parties surrounded by other people that were drinking and smoking and you know, doing inappropriate things. I've lost so many, like countless friends to this disease, and throughout my active using, I also got myself into relationships that were not healthy. I actually brought with me like my diary from when I was in 8th grade to my, like the letter to your future self. Like in that letter, I talk about my drinking and I say, I know this isn't right. And I talk about my suicide attempts. And there's so many journal entries about the parties that I used to go to, how lost I feel, how alone I was. Looking back and reading that letter, I'm just like, 13-year-old Melissa had no hope for the future. Did not want to be around. If I could change another thing, it would be I would have held on to my virginity. I could have taken like all of my experience and all of my trauma and made it into my future and made it like in a positive way. Fast forward to 2014. I lost him at 13 in 2008. Fast forward to 2014. The guy that I was dating, I was in a relationship with him. Unfortunately, in November of 2014, he committed suicide. That is something that has really resonated with me. I am not just in recovery for drugs and alcohol, but also for mental illness, because they go hand in hand. You can't say like that you're in recovery for drugs and alcohol and not have experienced a depressive episode or a manic episode, because essentially also like these are mind-altering chemicals. After he died, like I started realizing the first time, like, hey, I don't want to end up like him. You know, I don't want to die, and I don't want to live my life resenting anything either. I graduated Waldwick High School in 2013, and I barely remember my graduation because unfortunately I was under the influence. I was so intoxicated that I was stumbling, I was falling asleep, and I barely remember even getting my diploma. When it came time to writing in people's yearbooks, I wrote some very nasty things, I wrote inappropriate things, and that's what I'm left with. You know, that's how these people are gonna remember me by. Like, I used to go to parties in college and not know where I was, and I had no idea. And this was before we had iPhones. Like, I literally was left on my own. And so I would call up my sister, my oldest sister, because she had a car and she could drive. So I would call her and I'd be like, hey, I snuck out. I don't know really where I am, but this is the town. I need help. And she would come help me, no questions asked. You know, it formed like that special bond between us. And I'm thankful that she did that, because I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have that safe person to call, you know, to save me. And a lot of kids don't have that. I struggled with alcoholism all the way into my 20s. It was something that put me in the hospital several times for alcohol poisoning. I'm very grateful that I was able to find recovery, because essentially what got me there was adulthood knocked me in the face and was just like, wake up. This time around, because I've been in recovery in and out for the last 10 years. Even when I was a kid, like I would do 30 days without drinking. And I would be like, okay, I did it. I'm not, like, I don't have a problem because I did it without, alcohol. Like, I survived alcohol 30 days, I'm good. And I would convince myself, like, you don't have a problem. I started meeting people that were also living a healthy lifestyle, had healthy coping mechanisms, had stable lives, and I saw them and I was like, how do I get that? They seem happy. Because I don't think I was ever 100% happy. And then that is what kind of changed my mind, changed my mindset. I had to change, and I made that decision. And it was hard because I did go a year and a half with no drugs, no alcohol whatsoever, but I was still partying, I was still hanging out with those people, and I was still being dramatic. And I realized it's a lot more than just not drinking and not using drugs. It's organizing your day, it's meditating, it's knowing when to say when, it's putting your foot down and putting boundaries with people and being like, I'm uncomfortable, and not being afraid to say, hey, I'm uncomfortable, I want to go home. It's having escape plans, having that safe person to talk to, knowing when to get medical help, because I was also super ashamed to get a therapist, and also I couldn't afford a therapist, so I thought, I'll just deal with it myself. Once I got a therapist and I told them everything and I trauma dumped on them, she looked at me and she was like, okay, we're gonna set out a plan and we're gonna do what's called a relapse prevention plan. And you're gonna check in with me every single day. And so it wasn't until I had that second person there to hold me accountable, and I took responsibility, I held myself accountable, I made amends to people, I got my life together. And so now, today, I have multiple years in recovery, and I have a wonderful life. Obviously things don't stay perfect, nothing is perfect. I do have bad days, and sometimes my past does haunt me. I'm not ashamed of who I was. I own up to it and I tell people, yeah, that happened, but I learned from it and it's been XYZ amount of time, and here's where I am today. 10 years ago, we didn't have the technology that we have today, where you can go to a support group virtual meeting 24 hours a day. You didn't have that hotline that you could call free of charge. And so that's something that I wish kids knew about today. And so I'm here to tell you, it's okay to reach out, it's okay to get help, and it's okay to have those feelings, because feelings aren't facts. Feelings, they pass. So being upset that your cat died, being upset that your parents are getting divorced, being upset that your boyfriend broke up with you, that's okay. It's okay to feel upset. It's also okay to be happy. Being happy that you had your first kiss, being happy that you won the football game tonight, being happy that you got onto the cheerleading squad. It's okay to feel these things. But just make sure you're mindful and you're not wallowing and you're not hiding, and that you're being free to be yourself. And don't ever be ashamed to need help, to accept help. And if you see somebody that's struggling, say something. Your teachers and your principal and your guidance counselors, they're not here because they're getting paid. They're here because they really care about you guys and they want to see you guys succeed. I know from my experience, I'm friends with my teachers still today, and they just wanted me to succeed. They wanted me to be happy and to live a good life. And I'm doing that today. A little late, but I'm happy today. I have friends, I have family, I have my sobriety, my recovery, I have my memories, and I'm proud. I'm proud of who I am, and if anybody needs any help, just reach out, you know, go to a teacher, go to a trusted adult, or go on Google and just Google treatment centers near me.